only present to the value. Get away from this whole feature function because that's where you're comfortable. Sell only to the value. Less is more.
Hello, welcome to Heart Inspired, a show dedicated to highlighting individuals in their pursuit of authentic leadership, peeling back the layers to uncover the roadblocks they face, explore some of the actions they take, and what keeps them on track to continue their journey to be the best version of themselves. It is my hope that you will be inspired by their stories and gain some insights to help you in your own journey. I'm your host, Michelle Delgado.
When it comes to sales, some people are naturally designed to be in this role. Perhaps the career of selling chose them as much as they chose it. We cannot remain stuck in "this is how it's done," or "we've been doing it this way for years," with no plan to change. As a famous Greek philosopher once said, change is the only constant. When selling, we need to be mindful of our consumers' needs, their time, and competitors. Whether we are selling from B2B or B2C, it's important to be aware of what will resonate. In this series, my guests will share their journey and provide insights and perhaps inspire to review your sales technique so that you can continue to be successful. Michael Norton is the Senior Vice President of the Enterprise Accounts Division at Sandler Training. This was a position he held for 10 years prior to leaving Sandler to start his own consulting business called Tramazing, which stood for Training Made Amazing. Michael's journey includes 12 years working with the Zig Ziglar organization, including becoming the president of the company. During his career, Michael has worked with individuals and organizations across multiple industries, from the small and medium-sized businesses all the way up to the Fortune 50 corporations and everywhere in between. Michael's passion for developing people and leading teams will be evident as he shares stories and experiences from his personal, professional, and spiritual journey through his life. Please welcome my guest, Michael Norton. Welcome, Michael. I am so happy that you are on the show today. I can't wait to hear what's happening and what's new with you. We've gone back about over a year now, and so it's just amazing the journey that I've had based on the influences and the words of wisdom that you have bestowed upon me. So I'm really honored that you are here joining me on the show. Let's get started. We're talking about selling, and I know you are, that's in your DNA for sure. So tell me how you got into this industry and selling, and what was that like for you when you first knew you had the knack for it?
Well, that's a great question, Michelle. And first, just thank you for having me on the show. And it has been a pleasure getting to know you over since more than a year. I think it was Alon Zybert who introduced us.
Yes.
And, no regrets here. You've been just a gem to work with. And so thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for me, it was like really early on in my life, Michelle. I grew up with a very competitive nature. Like I was always playing sports, board games, anything. I had a family who were gamers. We weren't playing cards, we were playing board games. We were in the yard, we were doing something, right? And whether it's baseball, football, basketball, anything where I had a chance to win, right? So for me, when I first entered the sales world, I just treated it like a game. I wanted to win that game. That's what it came.
Wow.
And I'll tell you honestly, the good and the bad with that, it all really came supernaturally to me in the beginning, supernaturally. I had no anxiety about prospecting or call calling because I didn't know any better. My manager said, "Yep, here's your job. Here's what you have to go do. These are the rules. Get in the game and go." So my behaviors were exactly what they were supposed to be. So my funnel was full, and I was closing business. My whole life, people were telling me, "You're going to end up in sales one day." My relatives, friends, you should be in sales. You're just, you're great with people and you love people. And I was doing really, really well. I actually thought I was a natural. Like I talked myself into it. And that was my first big mistake in sales. And don't get me wrong, I was doing really, really good. And I could have just stayed that path and probably been a very mediocre, average salesperson. But it wasn't until somebody early on in my career recommended Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins. And before I knew it, I had Zig Ziglar books and audio cassettes, this is how far back it was, and Tom Hopkins
You're
books
dating yourself, Michael.
and seminars. So I started becoming a junkie, like literally a junkie, following Zig around and following Tom Hopkins around, going to their seminars, just never not listening to the cassettes in the car. Automobile University is what they called it, over and over and over again. I got it to the point where I memorized them. And now I actually, because of my background and like always wanting to practice, sports or games, like just get better. Well, now I have a way of getting better at my craft. Like I'm going to be in professional sales. Why do I want to be mediocre? That's not winning the game. I wanted to win the game. So, Selling Power Magazine, another great tool early on in my career where I was reading about other people's sales successes and like saying, hey, I can do that. I can build that into my repertoire, right? It came early and naturally. And then really when I understood that the important thing is, salespeople are not natural and they're not born. We have to work at our craft. And when I did that, it became an instant game changer.
Interesting. So you say it's not in your DNA, and yet you had an instinct for it at a young age.
Yeah, and I think there's things about certain people, the way we're wired. Like if you really do care about people, because sales is not manipulative, sales is not, you're trying to get over on your prospect or, scam them. If it fits in your DNA to be honest and have integrity and be truly trying to help them, I think that helps. If you have the natural ability to want to communicate to others, which I do, and I love being around people, that helps. Those are some of the tools. But when it really comes down to when you get into a competitive situation, like a really competitive situation where there's maybe a big investment that the company is thinking about making in you and your products and your company, you have to have the skills to compete. It would be like me trying to go, at 19 or 20 years old and never having played, professional baseball. Also, hey, just put me in the game. I love to play baseball. Third baseman. I could play outfield. Just put me in the game. And now I'm competing with athletes who've been, who are at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Well, being in sales is no different. When you learn that you really need to take your natural God-given gifts and talents and couple that with true skills and behaviors and have the right attitudes, then you learn how to really make a difference.
So in your first job of selling, when you got that real first win, what was that? What did that feel like? Were you like on the top of the world and nothing can stop you?
Yeah, I think for my first win, it probably wasn't so memorable. I think I made a couple, small ones, but I'll share one early in my career that is very memorable. And I've actually been asked to speak about this at different conferences. So again, this speaks to my competitive nature and always wanting to win. And I was selling healthcare. I was selling diagnostic imaging services. And what the deal was we were doing mobile diagnostic imaging services. So we would send the technician with the equipment in a van to a physician's office, small hospital, clinic. And so they didn't have to hire the technician or own the equipment. We would come in and provide the services. We would bill for the technical component. The physician would bill for interpreting the study. So they billed for the professional component. And I was doing really well in, you're from New Jersey. I was doing really well up in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Yep.
Really wanted to come back down to South Jersey where I was from, and started building my territory. And I found the largest practice down there. And I went in and I gave my pitch, and it was great. And the physician said, yeah, absolutely. Let's, sign me up. This sounds like too good to be true. And I'd like a technician here, every Monday and every Thursday. So I'm all excited. I'm like fired up. I just wrote this, great deal. And I have to go back and tell the people that I work with, the schedulers and the techs and my boss. I'm like, okay, hey, you got to put this in the queue. I'm going to need resources. And so they do that. And they call the Friday before to say, okay, how many patients do you have on Monday? And the office manager says, no, we don't have any patients. Okay, well, we'll call you back next Wednesday. You're on the schedule for Thursday also. And so they call on Wednesday. They don't have any patients. So this goes on for like 2 or 3 weeks. Now the scheduling department, holding technicians and holding equipment, is calling my boss and saying, hey, your sales guy is, full of crap.
Oh, no.
So he calls me and I'm like, I'm going to go down there and see him. And I just go down, I walk into the office, and the office manager looks at me and says, hey, you're not, don't come back here. The doctor's never going to use you. He thought about it. This is like, it's got to be, it's not worth it. It's too much hassle. We're just going to keep using the hospital, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow. And they were angry. It wasn't like a, it wasn't a calm, like they were like upset with me. And now
Wow.
I have no idea what happened because I'm like, wow, all I did was have a conversation. There was no hard sell. It was just shared what
Yeah.
other people were doing, what we do. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to give them like the 72-hour rule. They must just be upset. So I go back like 3 days later and I walk in and they throw me out. They're like, we told you, we're not using you, don't come back here. So now I'm like walking out of the office back to my car and I'm like, game on, like just game on. So I waited 2 weeks and I came back, brought new literature and new, information. I bring it and drop it off. They throw it in the garbage can. Tell me to leave. And like 2 weeks later, I come back and I bring different information and they would rip it up in front of me, or I might take my business card and rip it up. Now I'm having fun with it. And I'm just like,
Tough skin.
So now every 2 weeks I'm going back, right? Now I stop bringing anything in. And now I'm just having a conversation. Look, you're in my territory. You're the largest practice in my territory. If I don't show you on my call report, my boss is going to like put somebody else down here and somebody else is going to come in. So we start talking and now I'm like getting to know them, where they do on the weekend, names, their boats names, like we just became part of it was my every 2 weeks, last sales call I would make on a day.
Were you starting to get dinner invites and barbecue invites at this point?
No, but I did afterwards. So now it's almost a year since this has happened. Same thing. It's like one of those every 2 weeks. I'm in my last stop of the day. I have nothing with me. I'm completely unarmed, like no briefcase, no nothing. And the doctor walks out of one of the exam rooms with a patient and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh my God, you're still hanging around." And I said, "Yeah, it's
right."
And he goes, "Well, who else is using it?" And I listed off by now. I had like 40 other physicians, all using our service. He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I have 2 more patients just hanging out. I want to talk to you at the end of the day." So I went, got my stuff, came in, we talked, re-signed the agreement, and he became my #1 customer.
Oh my goodness, what a great story.
He stayed true to his word. Every Monday and every Thursday, we filled up the day with patients. He had that much of a caseload. So, for me, that was like that one, when that one finally happened.
Yeah.
Again, when I went back to my boss and brought in the agreement and said, "Okay, now look, we're doing this time." It's like, "Are you sure?" we're gonna hold equipment. We're gonna be, holding a tech. We can't put them back in inventory because we're holding them for you. And I'm like, "No, I promise he's on board this time." And we never looked back. And we wound up going to their house, out to dinners, we became super friends. And
that's unbelievable.
yeah, but it was that spirit of just like, I'm winning. I don't care how long the game takes.
Now, over the years of you selling, and you've obviously, you've honed your skills, you've become a master in that, and always learning, of course, but what are some of the things that you now share with other sales teams? Because I know you've led some sales teams and we'll talk about that. What are some of the things that from your own experience that you share with them that are just the basic core foundation?
Yeah.
Don't really change.
Yeah. Some of the things that we would call constants in this industry. And again, I've been truly blessed. I spent a number of years as a partner with Zig Ziglar, and then as a consultant, then a VP of sales, and then eventually the president of his company. So, and spent so many years working and partnering with Tom Hopkins, which they were my heroes, and I got to go, work with them and be partners with them and share the stage sometimes with them. And then Sandler. So, spent 10 years with Sandler, and when these are like Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, they introduced the concepts of questioning. Like they were some of the first early people on saying, you really have to, in sales, it is about qualifying. It's about questioning and going deeper and asking the right kinds of questions, right? And I think that never goes away, the questioning aspect of what we do. And I think a lot of salespeople miss that, especially new salespeople. They'll latch onto one thing, like they'll ask one question, the prospect will give them an answer, and all of a sudden they think that's the buying signal, or they try to solve that problem, instead of going 2 or 3 or 4 or more layers in to really understand, are they answering the right question? Do you have the right information to understand if that's the truth or not? And then Sandler, and actually David Sandler says this in one of his, David Sandler passed away years ago, but before he did, when he was recording one of his President's Clubs, he actually talked about that from, on one of the recordings. And he says, Tommy Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, yeah, they were great. They did the whole questioning thing. But he said, I added one more thing, and he did. And this is what he's famous for: pain. Not just asking questions to ask questions, but asking questions and really digging in. What is the problem? And if it's not fixed, what happens? How much is going to continue to cost you if you do not fix it, right? Asking questions really get to the center of pain. People respond more to pain than they do to gain, but it could be, look, if we help you and you can solve this, what does that do for you personally and professionally? Right? So it could be gain also, but we know it's usually more pain. So I think one of the constants is really, that never goes away, is that qualifying and questioning and going deeper. One of the other ones, and one of the very first ones, is earning and building trust, right? People, people say this in a whole bunch of different ways. People will buy from people who they like and who are like them, or people who they trust and who are like them. I like the way Zig Ziglar used to say it. And this is what I tell salespeople all the time. People will talk to people that they like, but they will do business with people they trust. So how do you earn that trust? If you earn that trust by doing the right thing, you're not trying to force feed a solution. If early on in the conversation, you realize your products and services do not fit the bill, if it's not, get out. Walk away. Save, and maybe another time your products and solutions and services will be the right thing at the right time. Or maybe even if you walk away, maybe you know somebody in that space where you can refer them to. Hey, this isn't me, but if I can, it'd be okay if I told my friend Michelle to give you a call. Right? This is exactly what she does. So I think that's also again, 5 primary reasons. I don't know if you've ever heard this, Michelle. There's 5 primary reasons people don't buy or make a buying decision. No want, no time, no need, no money, no trust. Number 1 is no trust. The number 1 reason, they either don't trust the salesperson, they don't trust the product or service or solution that the salesperson is proposing, or they don't trust the company to stand behind that product or solution. Your salesperson. So when you're building trust, you have to build trust for you. Like, who are you as the salesperson? You are going to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to follow up. You're going to treat them with honesty and integrity, right? Your true character is going to come out. You're demonstrating only the right products and solutions, not everything in your bag, not everything you have, just the right solutions. And your company, everybody, your customer service team, your sales engineers, your executives, everybody will support this customer. If you can develop that kind of trust, you're going to have a long-term relationship.
That it's so true. I mean, when you and I first met and you asked about whether I, am my natural salesperson, and I said, no, I really dealt more with customer service. And it's the same thing. I used to get these clients who they don't know me from Adam, and I would walk in there and I'd have to deliver the bad news. And it's how I delivered that bad news that really bridged that relationship, because they trusted me to tell them exactly what's going on, excuse me, and not sugarcoat it.
That's right.
And so the same with sales, if your product is not the right product, let them know.
Yeah. And another one on that, I love that you brought that up, Michelle. So sometimes as a salesperson, especially pre-pandemic when salespeople were going out and visiting face to face, but now you're doing it on Zoom or even on a phone call. Sometimes you find out about a problem before your customer service team finds out about it, right? You may know internally, like, hey, we're going to miss the delivery date. We don't have the supplies. We don't have it.
Yeah.
Or there's going to be a price increase. Bad salespeople will avoid the customer, let them find out about it, and hope that they can do damage control after. They don't have the result. No, and you have to, as soon as you know something bad is about to happen, this is how you build trust. If I was to come to you, Michelle, and say, hey, Michelle, I know we signed the agreement, and I know I promised that, the inventory would be here next Friday. I just want to share with you, in an internal meeting, I found out it's not, and I wanted to be the first one to call you, on my customer service team to call you. I know this is going to be an impact on you, and I'll make it right, but I wanted to be the one to tell you. How does that feel, as opposed to you finding out, or it's not there, and then all of a sudden you're calling my cell phone and I'm hiding, I'm not answering.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I mean, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Some things are out of our control. but it's the delivery of the message that is so important to keep that relationship. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Here's one more I'll give you just for new sales, especially new salespeople who make this mistake. One of the things I tell salespeople is take the less is more approach. It's just blah, 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 they want to keep talking and talking and talking, or they think they've gotten to the right solution that they want to propose, but instead of sticking to that, well, let me tell you what else I have. And by the way, if you do this, we also have this. And they all, before you know it, they are totally diluted the power of what they were doing. Only present to the value. Get away from this whole features, feature function, because that's where you're comfortable. Hey, guess what else this does? Oh, and guess what else other program that we have? Or sell only to the value. Less is more. Less is more in the sales process. Talk 25%, let the prospect talk 75% of the time. Sell only what meets their need in that moment. Don't add on right away, right? Get that piece done first.
Right.
Worry about upselling and cross-selling and bundling and doing something better, right? Quantify the value in front of them. Get them to confirm that quantified value. Less is more. Get that done first instead of just, oh my goodness, I'm going to make this as big as I possibly can. I'm going to tell them everything I have, and they're going to pick something. Maybe they'll pick 2 or 3 things.
And so let's say you're in that presentation, you're giving your pitch or what have you, and they're not necessarily, yes, let's buy right now. What is that time frame to follow up with them? What does that look like when you're nurturing that account?
So that's
or prospect, I should say.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it really depends on the situation. But the way you control that is setting expectations up front about everything. There's always mini agreements. So before you ever get off of a Zoom call, hang up a telephone call, leave an in-person meeting, don't ever do it without immediate next steps made abundantly clear. Sandler calls that a clear future commitment, a CFC. Get the clear future commitment. So if I'm selling to you, Michelle, and we have a presentation, you're my prospect, and along the way, I'm going to be checking in depending on how much time we've had together on what those next steps might be. But at the very end, I'm always going to say 5 or 10 minutes at the very end to say, hey, Michelle, we've been talking for about 40, 45 minutes right now. And I think just based on what I'm hearing, we should probably save these last few minutes to talk about what do the next steps really look like. What would you like to hear back from me? What, I owe you these 2 or 3 things. You owe me, you're going to get me this information so I can give you a much clearer proposal. When do you think you can get me those? And when would you like me to get this back to you by? Hey, you have to talk to Michelle. It sounds like you have to talk to other people on your team about this. Did I hear that correctly? Michelle, how much time do you think you need to do that? And when would you like me to circle back?
Yeah.
Next week? Is it 2 weeks? And if so, while we're together right now, can we just look at our calendars and get that in our calendar so we don't miss it?
Are there any other techniques that you can share that have changed during the time of selling for you or for teams that you have managed? Like what was a absolute, this is what you do, and now, no, that's not what you do?
So I think, early on, certainly, many, many years ago, people were all about the relationship, and there's still a lot of that going on depending on the industry. There are still certain industries where it is truly relationship driven. Salespeople who've been around the industry, and I'm telling you, this is no exaggeration. I met somebody, and one of our clients, 40 years in sales, 40 years in sales. He knows everybody in the industry. He knows everybody in his territory. He's still in sales. He never wanted to go through management. He just wanted to be in sales. It's all about the relationships for them. I think the biggest thing that's changed, and we all knew this was coming, is technology and innovation and access to information. And this is where, one of the things that people talk a lot about, Michelle, is pre-call planning and taking the time to pre-brief, whether it's the manager or another peer, to say, hey, I'm about to do this presentation. Can you just walk through it with me and get ready for it? They talk a lot about it, but you know how often it actually gets done? Very little.
Dress rehearsal.
Dress rehearsal or pre-call planning. They're just like, they think they should do it. And what a shame and what a miss. Because now we live in the information age. We live in the age of data, right? And it's right at our fingertips. Anything I want to know about my prospect, I can find in a million different ways. And if I show up to that prospect asking questions that I could have easily found on LinkedIn or easily found on their website or easily found by Googling the industry news and manufacturing of purple sticky widgets. Seriously, there's so much information out there. And I think one of the techniques that that is so powerful these days is not just going in and asking questions because you've got the sheet of questions your manager told you to ask.
Yeah.
But then you start just checking off the box. I asked it, great. When you ask a question, make sure it's relevant to the scenario. Make sure you're going to do something with that information you're going to present back. But don't just take it at face value. So, Michelle, thanks for asking that question. Question number 2, let me ask you this, and you just go into
Yeah.
questions. Totally uncomfortable. But if you can go in there with some really well thought out insights around the information that you found, right? And just as an example of this, sales is forever a revolving door, right? Some industries more than others. Some you have still some churn and burn environments. But we have this thing that's happening right now in the world called the Great Resignation.
Yep.
All right, we have this thing called the Great Resignation. So when you look at data around that, and specifically at salespeople, and Gartner just did this study, and I wish I should have remembered to memorize because it just came out last week. They did a webinar, but like something like 57. If I said, hey Michelle, 57% of people, according to Gartner, salespeople are burnt out or stressed out with their jobs. So another like 89% may already be looking for another job. When you think about the Great Resignation in your team, when we see turnover at that rate, it's one of two things. It's either they're not making the sales, so they're going to self-select and they're going to exit themselves, or they're not making the sales and the company is going to exit them, right? And there's all this pressure that builds up around that. So if they're not doing the behaviors, if they don't have the skills or the right attitude to be in that, how is that impacting your business? When you look down at your organization, at the behaviors they need to be doing to fill their funnel to accelerate success, what are you seeing?
Yeah.
That's a totally different question than, hey, Michelle, can you tell me about the turnover in your sales team?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Very different question.
A very different question. So, and we have access to that information. So when you go into especially a big complex opportunity or a team buying event where, they have 5-6 people who are stakeholders or influencers and decision makers who are going to get together as a committee to make this decision, you have to research them. You have to look at each and every one of them. LinkedIn is a great place to do that. You can have the information, right there.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people miss that and they just go in
blindly. Yeah. Another one that was, that's really very helpful. People have, when I've done some career coaching and things, if they're looking for a company that has a great culture, I say, go find out who the leaders are and go on YouTube and see if they have a YouTube video. You will find out a lot about a company's leadership by YouTubing. Yep. So lots of information right at the fingertips. There's no reason, or go to their website and look at their news area. You'll see what's happening. And that brings some conversation to your introduction in the meeting. Yep. Yeah, good stuff. So I know you're a keynote, and I'd like to know from you, when you are talking about, different subjects within the sales team, what's the one keynote you've done that's memorable, that you're really passionate about?
So the one it's funny you brought this up. So I did a version. I've been doing a version of this for several years, and it started out as the Dragon Slayer.
Okay.
Then it was the Return of the Dragon Slayer.
It's the sequel?
It's a sequel. Yep. And now it's a whole series. It's its own franchise, right?
Netflix, watch out.
So so I call it Lion Tamers and Dragon Slayers. And I added something to it for my faith journey as well. So I did a sermon on this. I actually delivered this as a sermon back in August as a guest pastor. I'm not a pastor, but sometimes I get to preach as a guest preacher, right? Deliver the message.
Awesome.
And I actually did the same talk yesterday morning for the Ziglar devotional. So Zig Ziglar, the organization, every Monday morning still holds a 1 hour or a 30-minute devotional. So first 30 minutes are just fellowship, getting to know each other, and then somebody comes on, a guest, and gives a message. And I did this in a 30-minute message yesterday.
Wow.
So and here's the gist of it is, so when you think about lion tamers and lions, the lion is fierce and ferocious and cunning and smart. the lion tamer gets in this cage, and what does the lion tamer have? All they have is their whip and their stool or their chair, right? and they're keeping that big, ferocious beast at bay with just a little bit of tools. But then you think of the metaphorical lions in our lives that we have to tame. The habits that we know, if we can change that habit or tame that habit, we're going to work out for the best. Indulgences, obsessions, not saying no enough, right?
Oh,
Not saying
yeah.
no enough. What we chase every salespeople. So here gets into the sales conversation. We're chasing every opportunity, every single opportunity. I did this when I was younger, by the way. So one of the things you learn, along the journey of, I've certainly got enough sales road rash to share all my mistakes and pains. But when you don't learn from your mistakes, right? My mistake was, since I told you early on in this conversation, I want to win, and I want to win every game. So I let every single deal into my funnel. I would just be like, this is a prospect, I'm going. I want to work on everything. So I never said no to anybody. Yeah, let me work on it. It wasn't the right thing. I was spreading myself too thin. I was spreading too thin. It was a really bad choice. I had to learn how to tame that lion, right? Because I had this FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm going to miss out on an opportunity. It's more money in my pocket. I want to win. I had to learn to say no, right? And that was a lion I had to tame. And I call that disqualification lion, because we want to hang on to everything. And qualifying, by the way, is probably arguably one of the most important things that we could do to make sure we're talking to salespeople, to the right person about the right problem, who has the right budget at the right time. That's what we're trying to do. And if we don't, it's okay to disqualify. Disqualifying is just as important as qualifying. At the end of the day, that's the truth. So if you can tame that lion, learn how to disqualify, you're going to be much better off. The Dragon Slayer, and I'm giving you the abbreviated version of this talk. So there's some things in there that behave like the dragons are not our competitors. The dragons are not our prospects. And this is like when I would first give the talk, they would think, oh, Dragon Slayers, he's out there kicking butt and taking names and slaying dragons. I'm winning business. No, those aren't the dragons that we're talking about. Our customers, our prospects are the good people. Those are the people we're protecting from the dragons, right? The dragons are our lack of doing behaviors, right? Our lack of doing our research, our lack of doing our pre-call plan, right? You think of a Dragon Slayer. What do you think of when you think of a Dragon Slayer? What are they wearing?
I'm not really sure, but
Probably
I think of fire.
They're wearing a suit of armor because they're fire. And they've got
Yeah.
steel. They've got the shield. They've got the sword. They've got the helmet. They do not want to get burned. They don't want to get bitten. And Dragon Slayers run to the problem, right? Dragon Slayers run to the problem. They run to the salespeople, run to the opportunity, right? And the dragons they have to fight are the everyday things that go on in between our ears. We can talk ourselves out of making a sales call. We can talk ourselves, oh, I called Michelle 3 times. She never picks up. I always get her voicemail. No, I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
If I've talked to Michelle 3 times, she just beats me up on price. She's going to want me to discount. I don't feel like dealing with that today. Right? So that those dragons are between our ears.
Yeah.
The behaviors. We have to make a certain amount of phone calls. We should be working LinkedIn and making those connections. We need to be doing our research. We need to be taking the time to talk to our peers around us about what we're doing. Like there's all these things. Those are the dragons we have to slay.
Yeah.
That we can be really, productive.
That's really great. Well, Michael, what's happening with you now? Where are you in your sales journey?
So for me, it's been an interesting ride, Michelle. I'm in an awesome place in my career. And again, because I've met people like you along the way. And God has blessed me, richly with people in my life. And so, when you and I met, we were introduced. When Mr. Ziglar retired in 2010, I was the president of this company.
Okay.
I went from there to Sandler.
Okay.
And we had Sandler as a partner, back in one of the other companies that we had started with the Ziglars. And so I've known David Mattson for a long time. Being at Sandler from April of 2010 until February 2019, just 2 months shy of 3 years, I left to start my own company. Amazing. And had I seen a pandemic coming, Michelle, I never would have left. Honestly, I was traveling around the globe. I was traveling everywhere, somewhere weekly. We had a lot of stuff going on, and the whole run with the Ziglar organization. And I had been traveling for a very long time. And it just got to the point where I was burnt out. And again, had I seen a pandemic coming in another year, I could have probably done another year and stayed home to catch my breath. But everything happens for a reason. So I left Sandler and I started Tremazing, which was a consulting organization. I had already had great relationships with other competitors. One of the few people in the industry who does that. I think there's great people in the performance development space, sales training, leadership, sales management, and I made it a point to always stay connected to them. So when I left, I was brokering sales training. But in order to do that effectively, I would go in on the front end and work with clients and say, what KPIs are you trying to improve? Because we know when people are trying to get better, they're either trying to increase something, improve something, expand something, or reduce something. So increase revenues, increase bookings, increase net new logos, improve margin, improve win-loss ratios, improve our sales behaviors, expand by getting either better upselling, cross-selling, going higher, wider, deeper, bundling or average sale price, or reducing sales cycle time, reducing costly turnover, or reducing customer attrition. So I would go in and say, where does it hurt? What are you really trying to fix? What are the
I like that. Where does it hurt?
And where do you have people? What have you tried in the past? What training have you gone through? What budget are you thinking about? What languages do you need? What tech are you tech forward, or are you just training forward? Like, what does your tech stack look like? So we would go in and do this entire evaluation. And because of how long I've been in the industry and the people that I knew, I would just say, look, instead of doing an RFP, or instead of inviting a whole bunch of people to come in and see what they have, I'm telling you, there's only 2 or 3 people who can actually do what you're looking for right now. There's only 2 or 3 companies out there that can fulfill this for you. So then we would farm out we would get paid for the consulting, and then we would farm out the training to, or the technology to, whether it's HubSpot as an example, or training to a Sandler. And we would move on, right? And we would just stay as a consultant for the learning and development and human resources side of it. We sold that company in July of 2021 to a company called Zinix, the gold standard in the mortgage industry. That's all they did was 20 years, and a phenomenal company with a phenomenal reputation. And they wanted to maybe branch out into more outside of the mortgage industry. They want to become more generalists, like the rest of us. And so they brought us in, they acquired us, and we spent a year working together and figuring that out. And over the summer, we decided we'd probably be better off as friends and partners than coexisting as CEO and president. I went in as the president, the CEO was already there, and we just decided it'd be better if we just got back into the Tremazing side, and we would work to we'll relaunch our consulting company, and we'll serve as partners, and we'll build you up, any way we possibly can. So we're in the middle of that. But what had happened was, when I went back to my partners to say, hey, it's time to, I need you to sign my agreement back now, because we're going to come back as our own consulting organization. David Matson, again, phenomenal human being and close friend for many, many years, just said, hey, Michael, don't do that. Why don't you consider just coming home? He goes, we're growing. They had an amazing year last year. We're growing, and I could really use you back here. So why don't you just come home? Like, that was just a really feel good.
Who doesn't like to hear that?
So we spent 3 hours together talking through it, and then came home, talked to my wife. We prayed about it. We thought about it. And we talked about all our options, what we wanted to do. So I accepted. I went right back into my role at Sandler, where I was, and spent almost 10 years. All the people gave me the welcome home has been incredible from people all over the world who are part of the Sandler organization. So it's been really nice. And my wife is in the middle of relaunching our consulting business, which you were a part of. Independent contractors. So you'll be back up on our page with a loan, and a few others who have already raised their hand and want to come back and be part of our consulting organization too. Go to Norton for now until we put the Tremazing site back up. So it's gotonorton.com.
I love it. And when it's a busy week, excuse me, when it's a busy week, I can't always read your Wednesday articles, but I do save them, and they are always so inspiring. So I just love that. And that's going to continue, right? Under Go to Norton.
Yeah, it's going to continue. I've been writing that column since 2008, and so over 700 columns. I've never missed a week, not one week. Since
Wow.
so over 700 published columns are out there.
That's great. That's great. So now that you've had all these, these recent changes, if somebody needed your expertise, where should they reach out to you? We'll definitely have it on the page with the show, but give us what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And Sam, you put in Sandler, you'll find me. If you put in Tremazing, you'll find me. My email is michael.norton@sandler.com. You can get
Easy.
And people who might be listening to this who know me, and you know me, this because you and I did it. So I'm always up for a phone call to talk about how to help somebody. Doesn't mean I'm charging you. It just means if you have something that I'm passionate, where I think my expertise can help you and your passion and do something, I'm always going to offer what I can to help with this. Zig Ziglar's quote is something that isn't just painted on the walls or, in a book. You really can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. So that's in my DNA. It's literally like it's just who
you are.
So if you are in the Ziglar organization, it's just who you are.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, I want to thank you again, Michael, for your time today. Always a pleasure talking to you.
It's a pleasure talking to you too, Michelle. And I think because you're coaching Tom Ziglar, right? You're actually
yes, I am.
Zig's son. So we can't let that go. That's a huge deal.
Yeah, it is. It's been an amazing experience, and thanks to you. And one of the things that I owe from you is the fact that you have to ask for the referral. So I'm asking for the referral again. But when I asked you that was just that was a blessing that landed in my lap, and we are still working closely together. In fact, we're speaking very shortly, so it's been a great experience. And some of the things that he shares about Zig, his father, I just wish I had met him, because he just sounds like an amazing individual with a lot of talent and a big heart.
Yeah, I pinch myself. People ask me, what was it like to be part of that organization? I pinch myself. I can't even, I was blessed. God put me in a place for a long time where I got to grow, and personally and professionally and spiritually through that family.
Well, again, Michael, it's been awesome speaking to you. I wish you all the best. I think now that you are back home, as you say, and going to kick off Tremazing again with what you were doing before is pretty awesome. And I look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Yep, that'll be mostly my wife kicking off the Tremazing thing there. I'll guide and help along the way. And I will see you in person.
Yes.
Both speaking at a women's conference. Imagine me, I'm speaking at a women's conference. You're going to be speaking at a women's conference on October 20th, I think, right?
October 20th. And you know what? When you say you're speaking at a women's conference, the first thing that comes to mind is inclusion.
Yes.
Yep.
100%. So,
I'm looking forward to that. We'll meet for the first time in person outside of a Zoom.
I know.
And your wife. I can't wait.
Yep. All right, Michelle.
All right. Be well. That brings us to the end of this series. For those of you who are sales savvy, I'm sure you can relate to what my guests have shared. Here are some of the takeaways I think will remain constant. Build trust, focus on the relationship, permission, and choices are imperative for your prospect. What will be your kryptonite? How will you make a difference in the way you approach selling?
If you enjoy our show, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you for listening to Heart Inspired. Until next time, I'm your host, Michelle Delgado. And don't forget to lean in, be heard, and be inspired. This podcast was created by Heart Metrics Consulting, editing and co-produced by David Castle Productions, and co-distributed by Business Travel 360. For more information about Heart Metrics Consulting, visit us at heartmetrics.com.